Okay, we'll now look at the Roman and Herodian background information for the New Testament. So this is New Testament Background Survey 3. At the end of the Maccabean Hasmonean period, we are around the area of 63 BC. And one of the important individuals who came to the aid of Hyrcanus II against his brother Aristobulus II is Pompey. So in 63 BC, the Roman general Pompey, who by this time had conquered virtually all the territory in Asia Minor up to Syria, arrived and conquered Jerusalem as well. So he got rid of Aristobulus II, and he placed as high priest Hyrcanus II. But Hyrcanus could not wear the title king. So the previous members of the Hasmonean family, from John Hyrcanus I up to Alexander Jannaeus, had worn the name of both king and high priest, but the Romans were not going to allow them to wear that title, king. In 37 BC, Rome would later confirm the son of an important Idumean merchant by the name of Antipater. His son Herod would be confirmed as ruler and even petitioned and was granted the name king. Herod had become a very effective administrator. When Hyrcanus II was not going to be king, Pompey allowed Antipater to place his two sons to be in control of different parts of Palestine. Antipater's oldest son was allowed to control Jerusalem, and his younger son, Herod, was allowed to control Galilee. Herod demonstrated that he could administer Galilee very effectively and also destroy all signs of Jewish uprising and rebellions. So the Herod eventually was then allowed to not only control Galilee but also Jerusalem. And when he was put in that position of Jerusalem, he petitioned and was granted the right to call himself king. Herod the Great was very skillful and cunning, and he was a great military strategist. He was also a master builder, responsible for building temples that could be used by Gentiles, by Greeks. He built theaters in the Greek style. He built hippodromes, which were places where one could race horses. He built a number of things. He especially built cities after the model of Greek cities. And probably what he's best known for is his building of the enlargement of the Jewish temple. Herod knew that for many Jews, God's anointed, God's chosen one, God's true king, would also renew and rebuild the temple. And so Herod, trying to win favor of the Jews, because he was doing many things that they did not like, but trying to win their favor, he enlarged the area of the temple courtyard, and also improved the structure of the temple. All of that temple today is destroyed, or was destroyed by the Romans in AD 70. But what does still remain today, and what you'll frequently see, are the stones of the foundation. These are Herodian stones, which are today referred to as the Wailing Wall. And it's a very sacred, important site for many Orthodox and conservative Jews. But Herod was also ruthless, and he was a murderous ruler. He drowned the boy priest Aristobulus III because he saw him as a potential rival to his position. Since Herod was not a Jew, he was an Idumean. Idumea is an area south of Jerusalem that had been conquered by the Maccabeans, and Idumeans had been forced to practice circumcision. But Herod was not truly a Jew. And so the Maccabean family was well revered and respected by Jews. And here was one descendant of that family. And he did not want to see this boy to grow up and to threaten him. So drowned a boy priest. He murdered his own wife, Merimee. Merimee was a direct descendant of the Hasmonean family, and he had married her in order to gain favor, but at a later point he felt like she was in collusion with one of her sons in order to get rid of Herod, and so he had Merimee and also his sons murdered. He also murdered Alexandra, Merimee's mother, and he ordered the execution of his two sons that he had with Merimee. Herod was not going to tolerate anyone who might rise up and threaten his authority. He murdered many of his close friends. He had murdered aristocrats who he suspected of being disloyal. In the gospel tradition, we see an account where Herod is suspicious of a prophecy about a child maybe being born in Bethlehem who would rise up to be king, and therefore he had children in Bethlehem killed, all under the age of 2. So this can be found in Matthew chapter 2. And before his death, he arrested men to be killed at his death, so there would be mourning in the nation. So that kind of shows just how much he was self-centered, and how much he hated any kind of rivals. You may want to pay attention in your book, Encountering the New Testament, the 2005 edition, and on page 49, you will see a chronology of Herod's rule. And so we think that Herod died somewhere around 4 to 6 BC. And since Jesus was born at the time that Herod the Great was still alive, that's why we place Jesus' birth now somewhere around 4 to 6 BC. Upon Herod's death, his son Archelaus is allowed to rule, but Rome will not allow Archelaus to carry the title king. So Herod was very unique in being able to hold that title, and also shows what Rome thinks very much about how it values that name. Herod was able to persuade Rome to allow him to wear the name king because there were other princes in the region who were using a similar name, and Herod felt he could not have effect as a political ruler in his area if he did not have that title. And so Rome acquiesced and let him wear it. But they weren't as willing to allow his son to use it. And even what happened after Herod's death is his kingdom was divided amongst his remaining children. And Archelaus was only allowed, although Archelaus wanted the same kingdom that his father had, he was only allowed Jerusalem and Judea. And the son Archelaus is mentioned in the Gospel of Matthew, and as one who took over. And so Jesus and his parents did not return back to Bethlehem, but instead bypassed Jerusalem and went on up into Galilee and settled in Nazareth. And that is a quick little background of both the Roman and Herodian influence. Of course, after Archelaus is deposed by the Romans decide to put procurators or governors in the area. And of course, the most famous procurator or governor will be Pontius Pilate. And we will find out more about him when we look at the life of Jesus.